What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. Today, I'm going to be chatting about something we have never had on podcasts. I've never seen this anywhere in Diesel, and that is a 6-liter Powerstroke in a Nissan GT-R. So I'm going to be joined by Cole. He's going to tell us about the build, why they chose that engine, how they just came up with the idea, and talk about what it was built for and some of the goals that they have with it, some of the benefits that a diesel engine provides them during these races and these events that they're going to. So it's going to be really cool to chat with them. Before we get to it, I want to remind you guys, if you go to kershaw.kiausa.com, you can save 20% off site-wide. Use code diesel20. It's a great way to save some money on something you might want for everyday carry, hunting, fishing, around the house, at the job site. They got a ton of cool things that really meet any budget. So whether you just need something that you need to work hard or you like to collect them, there's a ton of different opening devices, ton of different blade stills they got. So make sure and definitely check them out. Also, if you're watching on YouTube and you're not subscribed, make sure and subscribe. These episodes, there's so much information our guests provide, so many questions that they answer. It helps us reach more people who may not subscribe or know about the Diesel Podcast. So make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, like the video, comment on it. Let us know if there's a question that I didn't ask that you'd like me to ask the guest, get them back on, or show suggestions or just your thoughts on what we're chatting about. Love to hear from you guys and love to read those. All right, let's get to today's episode with Cole and talking about a 6-liter Powerstroke swapped into a Nissan GT-R. Cole, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I'm really excited to chat with you today. We've had a lot of people that wanted to know about this car with a 6-liter Powerstroke swap, so I'm really pumped to be able to chat with you today and learn about this really cool build.
Excellent. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat about it. It's quite the monstrosity, so it's definitely been turning some heads.
Well, I know people, when they see the title or if they're watching on YouTube, they're going to see a picture of the car. So let's just jump right into it. Like, where did the idea come from to 6-liter Powerstroke swap a Nissan GT-R?
Well, it's kind of an odd combination of things, but I'll keep it pretty simple for you. It's a joint venture between us, LYFE Motorsport, who has a history of racing the Nissan GT-R in time attack and hill climb type events, and Riff Raff Diesel, who provides a lot of Powerstroke performance products. So this is the second project that we've worked on together. The first one, we put a 6-liter in a 55 Ford F100, and after I drove it, I thought, wow, there's actually a lot of potential in reducing the weight that this vehicle is in, or that the engine is in, and it can perform really, really well. So it got me excited, and we had an old R35 GT-R chassis kind of sitting around that we retired from racing in 2015, and we jokingly said, hey, we should put a Powerstroke in it. And after driving the 55 Ford with it, it was like, actually, maybe this isn't a joke. Maybe there is something to this. And yeah, it kind of escalated and built from there. And we had events like the Pikes Peak hill climb in mind, going after the diesel record there. We had events like Bonneville, going after diesel records there. A number of different road course circuits, the F1 track in Texas. We want to go be the fastest diesel around that place. So it was just kind of an odd combination that we thought would work well. The R35 is naturally a heavy car. They're all-wheel drive. They're dimensionally large. And we thought, if we're going to put a truck engine into a car, this is about the best car that you could do it with, because it is already so big and so heavy. So it's kind of up to the task. So yeah, it was originally announced as an April Fool's joke on social media, and we got pretty good feedback. We're like, well, maybe we should do this. Maybe we are crazy enough to pull it off. And yeah, so our partners at Riff Raff, guided us through the diesel side of it. We knew the GT-R side of it, and built one hell of a car.
It's really cool combining both sides of what you guys do with racing and have done for a really long time with a company like Riff Raff Diesel and their specialty of diesel engines. And I think the thing that really kind of blew me away at first was just the car and having a diesel engine in it. We've talked about, or we've seen, Cummins swap Mustangs and Duramaxes and old Chevy cars and things like that, but nothing with a GT-R. So dimensionally, taking that engine and getting it in there, what kind of challenges or custom things did you guys have to do just to get it to sit in the car itself?
It's This was one of the easiest things, oddly enough, and it was by pure chance. We had committed to doing it before we had the 3D scan of the engine and the chassis to see. And so we knew we were going that direction. So we scanned the engine, we scanned the chassis, and we mocked it up, and we're like, no way. It clears the frame rails. Like, we're talking millimeters, such a small distance. So that we had to grind part of the frame rail in a couple spots to clear the exhaust manifolds, but it literally fit between the factory frame rails. So it's oddly enough, it did fit. We removed this entire transmission tunnel and everything to clear for the bigger transmission housing and everything like that. But yeah, the engine dimensionally fit in there. I'd say the most difficult part of fitting the engine was doing the compound turbo system and keeping that compact and back far, because we want the weight centralized towards the center of the car. Otherwise, it's going to be way too nose heavy. We knew we were putting a bigger, heavier engine in this thing. So we tried to push the engine as far back as possible. So essentially where the radio buttons are on a normal GT-R is the inlet to our big turbo. It's literally in the dashboard. The air filter, I can see into the compressor of the big turbo. So packaging was a huge task on this thing, but the actual fitment of the engine between the frame rails was surprisingly easy.
What was the hardest part of the build? Was it that transmission tunnel, the firewall, having the weight be kind of in the middle of the car, or was there something else that was just really challenging for you guys?
The challenging part is the unknowns and the things that nobody has ever done. I wish that I could call up somebody and say, hey, how does a Ford 6-liter do under 2 G's of cornering force? Turns out nobody's done that. There's nobody I can call. There's no magic hotline. And so we had to painfully go and find that stuff out ourselves. So we understand Pikes Peak and the challenges that are presented there. The air is super thin. Most vehicles will never, ever see 14,000 feet in their entire, life of driving around for hundreds of thousands of miles. So taking an already difficult platform like a diesel engine where it needs dense air, and you take it up a mountain, and then you change the altitudes from starting at 9,000 feet to 14,000 feet. So that was the most difficult part of the process, is figuring out how to make all of the different diesel components work in an area they've never been pushed to before. We had no Powerstroke engine data above 10,000 feet. We had no Powerstroke engine data on high G cornering forces in relation to oil system or oil consumption at 4,500 RPM. How much oil are we going through? Nobody knows. Nobody had those answers. So those have been the things that we've had to find out sometimes the hard way as we developed it. But it's been by far the most difficult part.
That is really one of the coolest things, because there's so many other types of platforms or builds where there is that data, or there's 20 years of experience with doing it. I think of a 6-liter, and they've come so far, and the aftermarket for them is huge, and they can make tons of power. But combining it with something like Pikes Peak and the lack of air and just the brutality of that race, you guys are really blazing a trail with this.
And we feel it because we're getting burned, man. It is I've always called it the bleeding edge of technology, because it's so painful to be out there doing it. And it's something we're familiar with, to be pushing it. The fact that we're just doing it with the diesel now is the new puzzle, that we've started to put together. But that's part of the fun, it's like going out and doing stuff people have never done and solving problems and coming up with solutions. Like, I dig that part. It comes only second to physically driving the race cars, and that is that's the next best part of it. But it's painful sometimes finding the solution to these things, but it's ultimately when you figure it out, and you were the first one there, first to do it, and then can spread that knowledge and information down the line. So, the riffraff product line is going to be better, having all this testing and development and, pushing the limits behind it. It's really good for them. It's good for us as a race car development shop. We get to learn new instrumentation, new challenges, and new platforms. So it's just a really weird way to have fun.
I was just thinking of, I did a recent episode with a racer who took a Cummins engine and he put it in a Fox body Mustang. And he was talking about how through his experience and calculations, he knew that he didn't need to make 1,500 or 2,500 horsepower with the weight and his suspension and everything like that. So when you guys were looking at this car with your racing background and chatting with Riff Raff Diesel, did you guys, or how did you guys come up with a power number, a torque number that you thought would make the car competitive and reliable and be able to perform, in something like, Pikes Peak or other kind of races? Was it, we need 1,000 horsepower, we need 1,200, we need 800, we need 750? What went into the power recipe for it?
The three factors that we used on it were turbo spool. We make all the power you want, but if you can't light the thing off, then what are you going to do? So having something that could spool, Riff Raff had a solid track record of drag racing the 6-liter, and so they knew, hey, this is a comfortable power level for these components. This is something you can go out and run season after season, year after year. So reliability was the second thing. We needed to spool, we needed to be reliable, and then the third factor was heat. You make more power, you make more heat, and sometimes it's an unfair exchange. So we wanted to make enough power that we were on the limited adhesion for forward grip on the tires, but not so much that we're blowing the tires off the thing, making a bunch of unnecessary heat, trying to keep it as efficient as possible. So we just weighed those things out, and then we just said, hey, we'll spray it with more nitrous. It's kind of the recipe, if you will.
It's really fascinating to think about it like that, because our background and the guests that we've had, it's a lot of drag racing, and it's trying to make the most power, get the right traction for the straight line race. But what you guys are doing, it's a lot longer. There's a lot more heat. There's a lot of other factors in it where maybe you don't need to just make 1,800 horsepower and face a whole new set of problems with it. So dialing it into that range is something I find really interesting. Just what goes into it. Chatting with Riff Raff Diesel and your team there and figuring that out. So I know people are going to say, well, how much power does it make? Do they have plans for more power? So are you guys happy with where it is from a power standpoint and the heat and the reliability of it?
With the limited testing, yes, it's definitely a suitable power level. If something that I learned with nitrous and diesels is they can run cooler with nitrous, and it's kind of an amazing thing to watch on some of the data. So it's one of those things where we can make more power and create less heat with the right combination of nitrous usage. So I'd like to make just a little bit more on the spray, because we are getting to the limit of traction on the tires to where it's not losing traction quite a bit. So I feel like we're close to the limit. I'd like another 20%, and I think we can do that on the bottle, and just have it when we need it.
There's a couple questions some listeners asked me that I'm really curious about as well. And one of them was, what kind of transmission did you guys put behind the engine into this GT-R that, it fits, it gives you the things you guys need as racers to be able to, dial it in and customize it. Something like you mentioned with that durability and reliability, as you're putting a lot of stress on it.
So as a driver, as a Pikes Peak competitor, I need throttle response. It is so important for me to have to balance a car. So a manual transmission makes the most sense. Unfortunately, there's no manual transmission that's a good fit for this setup. And so the second best option was to go with the 4R100 on a full manual valve body. So that at least gives me full control over, I need to be in this gear at this corner, upshifts, downshifts. We're also able to wire it up so it's on a paddle shift system, so I can keep both hands on the wheels under high G cornering, braking, that sort of stuff. And it actually, I was really impressed with it. I was concerned about running such a high performance car with a slush box 4-speed, but it does all right. So that's ended up what we're using. They've been known to hold plenty of power. I love the full manual control over it. And yeah, it's stout. So that's ultimately what we ended up going with.
I think of a GT-R, I think all-wheel drive, and then I think of a 4R100 and a diesel in it. Somebody said, is it still all-wheel drive? What are they doing with the driveline?
Yep. So it's just rear wheel drive. We run the 4R100. We've got a winner's quick change rear end, 10-inch ring gear, quick change ratio on the back, so we can dial on. Because we're going from like a road race car with a 6-speed transmission to something with only a 4-speed. Having that final gear ratio tunability is super important. When we package everything, we put a lot of weight over the rear axle or towards the rear of the car, and to help with the traction, with all the torque that we were making. And so, managing that 4-speed, it's the fact that it's an auto and diesel, it lays the power down really smooth, really linear. And so it's easy to manage, and it's surprisingly responsive for, it's a 4-speed auto.
This got me thinking about your guys' history, what you do, and the combination of diesel. What is your opinion on it in this kind of platform of racing? And is it something that you think has a future in it? Is it something that you guys want to experiment more with and take a look at? Can we take advantage of some of the things that diesel does with these other cars or these other vehicles that combine lighter weight and other sort of things into something you see you guys might play around with more in the future?
100%. I've always been a big fan of diesels. It's just, I drive them on the street. I was at the Sebring 12-hour race when Audi debuted their Le Mans race car with a diesel engine in North America. It was amazing. It was unbelievable. And, honestly, before that, I thought they were for towing boats. I didn't think that there was any, and then at that time, the diesel drag stuff was taking off and it was starting to get popular. And me being from Utah, there's a lot of, high performance diesel shops here, and they have big races and all that. So I understood it from that standpoint, but I didn't believe it could be like a proper road race or hill climb type engine or application. I saw what Audi did with it under race conditions, and they just dominated. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. So it kind of opened my eyes at that point. And I think as the aftermarket and the tuning continues to push, it's going to make more and more sense. It's just efficiency and power. They're robust. They make a lot of power. If we could squeeze a little bit of weight, if somebody made like a lightweight billet, block for these things, oh man, it'd be quite the potent weapon. In fact, that it's just a little heavy is the biggest downside to it. But one day we'll have lightweight blocks, and I'll be very happy to order one. I think it's something that I want to play more with. I believe in it as a long-term, and in fact, I believe diesel is going to outlast gas in the big scheme of things over time. So I'm happy to be a part of the development of diesels that we have today.
I was thinking about the weight. When I think of the weight of a gas engine and then a diesel, there's so much more. Is that really just the biggest challenge of packaging something like this, is the weight, how you distribute it compared to a gas engine that you could use?
Totally. Because if you don't have balance, then your power is useless. And so we went through great efforts to put that engine far enough back between the shock towers to tuck it back so it wasn't too nose heavy. So we've got about the front cylinder lined up with the center line of the wheels, which is really impressive. I'm very stoked that the guys in the shop were able to pull that off and keep that weight behind the front wheels. Otherwise, the thing would just handle so poorly, it wouldn't even matter. The fact that we were able to get a lot of weight over the rear wheels packaging wise, but not hang it behind the rear axle. Another, great job by the team to put the power down. We need the weight on top of the tires in a 2-wheel drive configuration. So, the packaging of everything and having good balance and good cooling, because we have 3 radiators in the back, 2 air oil heat exchangers, 2 oil water heat exchangers, 3 fans. It's just an unbelievable packaging nightmare for somebody to look at and say, how am I going to put all this crap in here? But and not hang it out past the axles, because that changes the polar moment, the time that it takes to change direction from moving to the left to the right. And all of these things were taken into consideration and planned out as we executed the build.
I had another listener that, how just being a gearhead, we all have our brands that we like and gravitate towards Ford, GM, or Ram. And somebody said, well, make sure you ask them, like, are they ever going to do a Duramax or a Cummins or even look at that? Or so I wanted to ask you, do you think you guys might venture into some of the other diesel engines out there for maybe another build or something like that?
Doubt it. I doubt it. Yeah, I'm just I grew up around Powerstrokes, and I remember the first time I went deer hunting with my dad's buddy, and he had his new Powerstroke at the time. It was like 97 or something like that. I didn't think we were going to find a single deer because the thing was so loud. It was unbelievable. But that was my introduction to Powerstrokes. And so I personally, that's kind of the brand for me. Riff Raff, obviously, through and through Powerstroke people. So, I'm not against, trying some other flavors, but if it's my choice, and I can only pick one, that's one I'm going to choose.
That's it's so interesting when as you had mentioned, a hunting trip and a 97 OBS and just how the older trucks, they'll either spark a memory with us. I hear that from a lot of guests where, their grandfather had a 12 valve or somebody had a 6.2 or 6.5 GM or the 7.3. And it's just, we always keep that connection. And it's really cool to see on the Powerstroke side how for the longest time it was, if you want to go fast, you get a Cummins or you get a Duramax. And whether it's 7.3s, whether it's 6 liters, there is so much that's out there for them that you guys can pick from in the aftermarket with different parts and technology that it's really cool to see how it's emerged and become viable for a lot of different things, not just this build, but also drag racing or for the guys who do tow and they just want, something reliable. It's been really cool to kind of watch and see what you guys are doing with this Nissan, GT-R with a 6 liter, what you're able to do with it. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's been a super fun project to be a part of, and definitely has. It's unique. We build a lot of cool cars, but man, nothing turns heads like this thing, especially as it's idling, just cruising through the pits. People move out of the way because they think a truck hauling a race car trailer is coming through the pits, and they look at the car and it just doesn't compute. So it's certainly fun to turn heads.
I did want to ask you a little bit more about the shop because I know a lot of our listeners, they're into racing. They're into all different kinds of things. They might be partial to diesel, but they have other interests. What do you guys typically work on and build there in the shop?
It's a lot of fabrication and engineering based around motorsport. We get some oddball projects where we'll take on a custom build that's automotive or performance related, but we'll never race kind of thing. So we got a bunch of talented fabricators, engineers. We do a lot of our CAD stuff in-house. We do carbon fiber in-house. And so we specialize in ground up race car builds. So let's say you have a particular car maybe you want to put a factory style engine in it, do a replica of an older race car. Maybe you want to do something wild, like put a Powerstroke in the GT-R. So we're kind of, we try to do as much in-house as possible. So we have a wide range of talents at the shop that we do here, and then a couple partners that we work with on, maybe final tuning or, production parts, things like that. So yeah, we just like building race cars from the ground up and doing all the custom stuff from start to finish. And ultimately, we're a motorsport shop. We want to take that car and race. We do some kind of show car type stuff, but I'm not a show car guy. I'm a race car driver, man. So if you want the best version of me involved in your build, we got to go racing. And so yeah, it is pretty much all motorsport based. And out of this shop, we started a small car company called Sierra Cars, which is a lightweight, open wheel, single seat race car. Picture like a UTV in an F1 car had a little rally car baby. And that we make that here in house as well. So just another cool project thing that we can race around.
Where did your passion for racing come from? Or what was the first time you remember, seeing it or doing it and going, I need to do this. This is what I want to do.
Well, it was man and machine. It started with bicycles, I guess. I was riding my bike and I just wanted to go faster, and I could ride my bike faster than I could run. So that was an upgrade. And then I started cleaning my bike with a Q-tip, paying attention to the little details on things. And then, so I got into bikes, became kind of a bike mechanic. It was my first job, was unboxing bikes and assembling them. And then I turned 15. I bought a car for my grandma and it had a manual transmission. So, between like 14 and 15, I get Gran Turismo as a video game. I get a car with a manual transmission, and I'm already a bike mechanic. So I was ruined, I think, back then. So yeah, I went to school to become a mechanic, and ultimately knew I wanted to be driving race cars, but I had no money to do anything like that with. So I became a mechanic, started to build cars for myself. That turned into build cars for other people, and have just continued to try to stay, behind the driver's seat and hang out in the shop with a bunch of rad dudes building cool cars.
It's really interesting you say Gran Turismo, because prior to that releasing, I wasn't into cars, trucks, anything. I remember that game came out. I'm totally dating myself too, but that game came out and you could take it to the shop and do like exhaust and intake and lower the weight and do stuff. And that's where I thought, this is a whole new world. This is really cool. You can customize vehicles and do stuff with it. And that was something that I haven't really thought about it till right now when you mentioned it. That was really what got me interested in automotive, was the ability to customize something. And that game just kind of brought it kind of to me in a way.
Oh, 100%. I do Gran Turismo in real life. Like that is my, and that's all I wanted as a kid. I couldn't believe it. I was so blown away with cars. My family didn't have money, so it was like they paid $35 a year for my ABA BMX membership, like race membership fee, and that was a stretch, And so the thought of actually driving race cars or doing it in the future was so far out of my thoughts that Gran Turismo was it. It was my connection to that stuff. And Fast and Furious came out a little bit after that. I was 15 when Fast and Furious came out, and so there was all those things at that point in my life kind of just put me down the path that I was just going to play Gran Turismo in real life.
One of the things I love to do with this podcast, and I feel lucky that the platform provides, is someone will listen. They could be younger. There's actually a lot of younger people that'll listen, and they'll say, hey, I want to get into this. I want to do this. I want to build cars or trucks, or I want to build, a diesel dragster or something like that. And hearing your story and how it started and where you're at now, what is some advice you would give somebody that's younger out there? They want to do this, but either they don't feel they have the opportunity, or they're not exposed to it, or that's just kind of a dream. What would you tell them to do if they want to pursue basically doing what you're doing and build things and race things, be able to help them along that journey?
I get asked this question, and I think quite a bit, and so I've had a lot of time to think about the response, and I break it down into two categories. There's ultimately things you have to do to make a living. You got to live, right? So, but everybody wants to be doing something that they enjoy doing to make a living. Okay, and so that for me was a mechanic. My end goal was never to be a mechanic. I didn't want to be the best dude at my local dealership. Like, those guys make good money and everything, but I had bigger dreams than that. But I needed to make a living. And on the second part of that is always be working towards the thing you actually want to be doing. And I wanted to be a race car driver, and that was it more than anything. And so with all my free time and, actually looking for little side gigs and stuff like that, I pursued racing. And as I worked at the car dealership full time, I became a mechanic. I got accepted to Porsche factory training, became a Porsche mechanic, and that was my gig. But nobody was letting me drive their race cars. It was extremely disappointing. So being able to, make your bread and butter, understand you got to go out there and make a living, while still continuing to pursue your dreams, the things you truly want to be doing. You've got to dig in and give that little extra percent. If you're burned out at 5 o'clock when you get off work, you're not going to get that next step. I burned the candle at both ends through my 20s. Working at the dealership and pursuing racing jobs and funding my own racing and doing my own training and learning from people better than me. It was the extra time that I put in that allowed me to really start to live my dreams. And it was something that I was able to pursue part-time. I didn't have to give up, a place to live or a car because, my regular job covered that. But digging in and spending, and it was easy for me because I was passionate about it, but it is work. And spending that extra bit of time chasing my passion and then ultimately being able to transition my passion into my full-time career. There was a very definitive moment when I was working in racing, but working at the dealership. I was standing in the middle of a racetrack in Florida. They were unloading a brand new Porsche race car, fresh from Germany, like literally flown in the night before. And I looked at all these people that were working there in Sebring, Florida, and they were getting paid to play with race cars. It was really like man, and I'm one of those people. It was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to work into racing full time and make it my only gig. And I was able to do that about 5 years after that point, and get my own shop. And so the transition wasn't overnight. I had to do a bunch of stuff I didn't want to do in order to get there. But I never lost sight of, hey, this is what I truly want to be doing the most. And some driving gigs I got, I'd only get a couple opportunities a year, and now I'm driving something cool once a week, it seems like. So, but it happened by working on it part time and just taking those opportunities as they would come up.
Sounds like a lot of patience, and then also staying focused on the goal as well through the process of getting there. And I think a lot of times younger people, and I was like this when I was younger, I wanted things right away. I wanted to achieve it. I didn't understand that it took a while. So I think that really speaks a lot to, a way that people can do it and just patiently work towards it and achieve it. And I know, with this car, like I said, people on YouTube, they're going to see the thumbnail. They're going to know by the title. It is a beautiful car. Where can people find and follow the car, your shop, what you guys are doing? Stay tuned as you guys are, racing it and testing it, and just follow the build.
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under LYFE Motorsport, and that's Life with a Y, LYFE. And we've done a whole or a whole series of videos documenting the build of the GT-R. I think there's about a 10 video series on there. And in the next 2 weeks, we'll drop our Pikes Peak post-event video. It's a complete recap of everything we went to up into the race and through race day. So that'll be dropping here soon on YouTube. We do put out content pretty regularly, not only on the diesel GT-R build, but some of the other stuff that comes through the shop as well.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, Cole. It was, like I said, awesome to see the car when I saw it on Instagram, and then I started to learn a little bit more about it by following you guys, and then hearing your story about racing and doing what you do, doing what you love, and something totally unique, which is a 6-liter Powerstroke in a GT-R. And so I look forward to following it, and it was a fantastic chat, and can't wait to see what you guys are able to do with it.
Excellent, man. Well, thanks for reaching out, and I'm happy to share with you guys. And I feel like we're just getting started, just starting to unlock all the little secrets in this thing. I was so impressed with it on our very first, go out, and that doesn't happen usually on new race car builds. They usually suck for a while. So we're off to a good start with this one, and I'm excited to see what comes of it.
Don't forget, diesel fans, make sure and head on over to kershaw.kiausa.com. Use code diesel20 for 20% off site-wide. They got a ton of choices no matter what your budget is or what you need the knife to do, whether it's everyday carry, something for fishing, hunting, at home, around the job site. There's a ton of cool things. A lot of you guys have told me what you got, and it's so cool to see the gear out there and learn more about knives. Myself, we've had Kershaw Knives on the podcast before, and they're a great company. We appreciate them supporting the podcast and then also offering a way to save 20% off their website. I also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreons, Tyler Lowen at 23 Diesel, Caleb, our other Patreons, our subscribers on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We appreciate your guys' support over the years and the great suggestions that you have for guest builds, things that you guys want to know more about. We love being able to deliver that to you. So we wanted to thank you guys. Until next time, keep the shiny side up.